I thought I had moved on. 6 months had passed since I walked away from Jason, my lying, cheating ex-boyfriend. 6 months since I found out he had been sneaking around with not one, but 2 other women behind my back. The betrayal was like acid in my veins, burning slow, refusing to fade even after all this time. When I caught him, he didn't even have the decency to deny it, just stood there, smirking as if I were some joke he had outgrown. I swore I'd never look back. And yet, when my phone rang that night, a number I didn't recognize flashing. On the screen, I answered. Hello, a long pause. Then, his voice softer than I remembered. Lena. My entire body stiffened. I hadn't heard his voice in half a year, but it still had the power to make my stomach clench. I should have hung up right then, but I didn't. Jason, I said, my tone flat, unreadable. Yeah, a heavy sigh. Please don't hang up. Just let me say what I have to say. I should have laughed in his face. I should have blocked the number. But there was something about his tone, desperate, uncertain, that kept me on the line. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something darker. Make it quick, I snapped. Gripping my phone tighter. I messed up, he blurted out. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But Lena, I can't stop thinking about you. I miss you. I miss us. I rolled my eyes so hard they nearly got stuck in the back of my head. That's funny, because I don't remember us including 2 side chicks. I was stupid, he said. Voice breaking slightly. I was selfish. I don't even know why I did it. I guess I thought I could get away with it. But the truth is, no one has ever made me feel the way you do. Oh, he was good. Real good. A few months ago, I might have fallen for it. But now I saw right through him. Still, an idea was already forming in my mind. A delicious, dangerous idea. Love, I repeated, feigning hesitation. Jason, I don't know. Please. His desperation was almost convincing. Almost. Just. Give me one chance to prove it. I'll do anything. I let a beat of silence stretch between us before sighing dramatically. Fine, I murmured. One chance. Really? His relief was almost comical. But on my terms, let my voice dip into something softer, more suggestive. Meet me at your place tomorrow night. I'll be waiting. I could practically hear him grinning through the phone. I won't mess this up, he swore. Oh, I knew he wouldn't. Because this time, I was in control. Asterisk, I spent the next day preparing. Not in the way Jason probably imagined, not with roses and sweet, forgiving words. No, my version of preparation was different. I picked out the black lace lingerie he had always loved. It was ridiculous, really, how much power men gave to scraps of fabric. I slid on a sleek black dress, one that hugged my curves in all the right places, paired it with heels sharp enough to be considered weapons. Then, I tucked the handcuffs into my purse. By the time I arrived at Jason's apartment, the anticipation hummed through my veins. He opened the door the second I knocked, looking exactly as I expected. A little scruffy, a little too eager, like a man who thought he had won the lottery. Damn, he breathed, eyes raking over me. You look incredible. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Glad you think so. He stepped aside, letting me in. The apartment smelled the same as cologne, whiskey, a faint trace of cigarette smoke. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. I can't believe you're really here, Jason murmured, reaching for me. I let him, just for a second, let his hands rest on my waist, before I stepped back, tilting my head playfully. Patience, I purred. I thought we could make this interesting. His brow lifted. Interesting how? I pulled the cuffs from my purse, letting the metal glint under the dim light. His expression shifted from confusion to intrigue, to something darker. Damn, Lena, he said, a slow grin spreading across his lips. Didn't know you had it in you? I leaned in, letting my breath ghost over his ear. Undress. It didn't need to be told twice. He yanked his shirt over his head, tossed it aside, then unbuckled his belt. His hands were shaking slightly, excitement coursing through him. I led him to the bed, pressed him down onto the mattress. Hands up, I whispered. The second the cuffs clicked around his wrists, I knew I had him exactly where I wanted him. Lena, he murmured, shifting slightly. This is, but I was already stepping back. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and aimed it directly at him. Click, his eyes widened. What are you doing? I smirked, flashing the screen at him. Just making sure I have a little souvenir. The shift in his expression was beautiful. The lust drained from his face, replaced by panic. "Lena," he said, his voice sharp now. "Unlock these. Now?" I stabbed. "That's not how this works, Jason. You see, 6 months ago, you humiliated me. You made me feel like a fool." I leaned in, my lips curling. "Now, it's your turn." His muscles tensed, testing the cuffs. "You can't be serious." "But I am." I took another picture, this time making sure his furious, red-faced expression was captured in perfect clarity. "I just wanted to leave you with a memory, you know? Something to remember me by." His rage exploded. "Lena, you bitch. Unlock these damn cuffs." But I was already walking toward the door. I glanced back once, just to see the pure, helpless fury in his eyes. Then, with the sweetest smile, I stepped out and shut the door behind me. Outside, the cold night air filled. My lungs sharp and electric. My soul had never felt so sweet. Jason's furious shouts followed me down the hallway, muffled but still deliciously satisfying. "Lena, you crazy, get back here. Let me out, damn it." I didn't stop. Didn't even hesitate. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor with a satisfied smirk. The moment the doors closed, sealing me away from his raging voice, I let out a long, slow exhale. It was done. 6 months of anger, bitterness, and heartbreak all poured into those few perfect minutes. I had dreamed about this moment for so long, imagined 1,000 different ways to get back at him. But none of them had felt quite rightened till now. Seeing Jason, naked and handcuffed to his own bed, panic flashing in his eyes as he realized he had just been outplayed. That was art. I scrolled through the photos on my phone, admiring my handiwork. Not that I planned on using them, no. This wasn't about blackmail. This was about power. It's about giving Jason a taste of the helplessness he had made me feel. The elevator dinged, and I stepped into the lobby, my heels clicking against the polished tile. The doorman barely glanced up as I strutted past. Outside, the night was crisp and cool, the air humming with the energy of the city. I took a deep breath, letting the satisfaction settle deep in my bones. I had 1 dot or so, I thought. My phone rang the moment I slid into my car. For a split second, thought it was Jason somehow having managed to free himself already. But when I glanced at the screen, an unknown number flashed across it. I frowned, but answered anyway. "Hello." Silence. A weird, heavy silence. The kind that sends a prickle down your spine. "Hello," I repeated, gripping the steering wheel. Then, a soft breath, and a voice. Low, unfamiliar. "You think that was funny, don't you?" I froze. The voice wasn't Jason's. It was someone else. Someone I didn't recognize, but they knew what I had done. My pulse skittered. "Who is this?" A chuckle. Dark. Almost amused. "You'll find out soon enough." The call disconnected. I stared at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. What the hell was that? For the first time since walking out of Jason's apartment, a sliver of unease crept into my satisfaction. I swallowed hard, pushing the feeling down. Maybe it was one of Jason's friends. Maybe he had managed to call someone for help, and they were just trying to spook me. Yeah, that had to be it. I started the engine and pulled out onto the street, shaking off the lingering chill. Let them be mad. I didn't regret a damn thing. By the time I got home, it was nearly midnight. My apartment was dark, quiet. I kicked off my heels, tossed my purse onto the counter, and flopped onto the couch with a satisfied sigh. I had earned this moment. The sweet, lingering high of victory. Then 3 sharp knocks at my door. I shot upright. My heart pounded. No one knocked at my door this late, ever. I hesitated, and grabbed my phone, creeping toward the peephole. I expected Jason, furious somehow. Free, ready to throw a tantrum on my doorstep. But it wasn't him. A man stood there instead, tall, dressed in black. His face was partially hidden under the shadow of a hoodie. A sinking feeling settled in my gut. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then another knock. Slow, deliberate. I clenched my jaw and finally spoke. "Who is it?" No answer. My stomach twisted. Is this the guy who called me? I backed away, my fingers tightening around my phone. Maybe I should call the cops. Maybe another knock. Louder this time. "Lena." My blood ran cold. He knew my name. I didn't wait to hear what else he had to say. I scrambled back, fingers shaking as I pulled up my keypad. 921, a slip of paper, slid under my door. I froze it. Was white, creased at the edges, as if it had been folded and unfolded too many times. My breath hitched as I crouched down, my hands trembling as I reached for it. A single sentence was scrawled across it in red ink. Revenge is a game to people can play. My breath caught in my throat. I shot up, chest heaving, and pressed my eye. To the peephole again. The man was gone. The hallway was empty. My apartment felt eerily silent. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I stood there for what felt like forever, gripping the note so tightly my knuckles turned white. Then, finally, I exhaled. Jason, it had to be him. Maybe he had gotten free, maybe he had called a friend to come spook me, but that didn't make sense. This felt different, more deliberate, more calculated. A part of me wanted to dismiss it as a scare tactic, some pathetic attempt at intimidation, but another part of me knew that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Asterisk, I locked every door and window in my apartment that night. I told myself it was just paranoia, that Jason was throwing a tantrum, playing some pathetic mind game to make me regret what I had done. But deep down, I knew better. That damn note sat on my kitchen counter, mocking me. The words scratched in jagged red ink burned into my brain. Revenge is a game to people can play. I stared at it, my mind spinning. I had expected Jason to be angry. I had even expected him to try something childish, maybe spam my phone with calls, send me a few nasty messages. But this was something else. And that man at my door. I didn't know him. I barely slept that night. Every creak, every shadow made my pulse jump. I kept my phone beside me, half expecting another unknown call, another knock at the door. But nothing came. By morning, I convinced myself I had overreacted. Jason's just pissed. That's all. Let him throw his fit. He'll get over it. I went about my day as normally as possible, pushing the night's events to the back of my mind. Work, errands, pretending I wasn't constantly checking over my shoulder. But the feeling didn't go away. The feeling that I was being watched. Asterisk, it was later that evening when I saw him again. I had stopped at a small coffee shop near my apartment, needing a moment of normalcy. As I waited in line, scrolling absently through my phone, I felt that sharp, nagging awareness. Someone was watching me. I turned slowly, my stomach tightening. And there he was, across the street, standing beneath a lamppost. The same black hoodie, the same unsettling stillness. He wasn't looking away this time. His head was tilted slightly, as if studying me. I swallowed hard, my pulse hammered against my ribs. Don't panic. Don't let him see you're scared. I turned back to the counter, forcing myself to keep my expression neutral. Ma'am. I blinked. The barista was staring at me expectantly. Oh, sorry, I muttered, shaking myself. Just a black coffee. I fumbled with my wallet, my hands trembling slightly. By the time I turned back toward the street, the man was gone. A cold shiver ran down my spine. This isn't Jason. This is something else. And that terrified me. Asterisk, I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to get them. I drove straight to Jason's apartment. The idea of seeing his face again made my skin crawl. But I had no choice. If he was behind this, I had to know. When I knocked on his door, I half expected him to still be cuffed to the bed, red-faced and seething. But when he swung the door open, he looked normal, no signs of struggle, no anger, just mild surprise. Well, he drawled, crossing his arms. Look who decided to come back. I stepped past him, uninvited. Cut the act, Jason, he smirked. Not even a hello. I whirled on him, gripping my phone tightly. Who was the guy you sent to my apartment last night? His smirk faltered. I didn't miss the flicker of genuine confusion in his eyes. What guy? He asked. I narrowed my eyes. Don't play dumb. Some creep in a hoodie knocked on my door, left me a note. You trying to scare me? Jason let out a short, bitter laugh. Lena, why the hell would I do that? I hesitated. Trust me, he continued, leaning against the counter. If I wanted revenge, I'd be a lot more direct about it. Something about his tone sent a chill through me. I wanted to believe he was lying. I wanted to believe this was just his way of messing with me, But for the first time in his pathetic, lying life, I thought he might be telling the truth. And that scared me more than anything. Asterisk, I left Jason's apartment feeling worse than when I arrived. If he wasn't behind the note, then who was? That question echoed in my mind all the way home. It wasn't until I pulled into my parking garage that I noticed something was off. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Someone had been here. No, someone was still here. I could feel it, slowly, deliberately. I turned my head, my breath caught in my throat. A single photograph sat tucked beneath my windshield wiper, with shaking hands. I stepped out, grabbing it quickly. It was a picture of me. Taken that morning, I was leaving my apartment, coffee in hand. Glancing over my shoulder, but that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the small, scribbled message beneath it. Smile, sweetheart. The game's just getting started. I stood there in the dim light of the parking garage, gripping the photograph so tightly it crumpled in my fingers. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat heavy with dread. Someone had taken this picture of me, not yesterday, not last week. This morning, a fresh wave of nausea rolled through me. I turned on my heels, scanning the garage, my pulse racing. Was he watching me now? Was he waiting in the shadows, enjoying the panic creeping into my bones? I needed to get out of here, forcing myself to move. I climbed into my car and locked the doors. My hands shook as I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, but my breath still came in shallow gasps. I couldn't ignore this anymore. This wasn't Jason. This wasn't some harmless prank. This was real. And I was in danger. Asterisk, I drove straight to the nearest police station, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so hard they ached. The moment I stepped inside, the sterile smell of stale coffee and disinfectant filled my lungs. A bored-looking officer sat behind the desk, barely glancing up as I approached. "I need to report something," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. "Someone is following me." The officer sighed, setting down his pen. "Ma'am, are you in immediate danger?" I hesitated. "No, but has this person threatened you?" I clenched my jaw. "Not directly, but he's been watching me. He left a note on my door. Then, today, I found this on my car." I shoved the photograph onto the counter. The officer barely glanced at it. "Do you know who this person is?" "No." He sighed again, clearly unimpressed. "Fortunately, there's not much we can do unless he actually harms you. If you feel unsafe, I suggest you change your routine, stay with a friend, or get a restraining order." "A restraining order? Against who?" I snapped. "I don't even know who he is." The officer just gave me a placating look. "Ma'am, we can file a report, but unless a crime has been committed, our hands are tied." I wanted to scream instead. I grabbed the photograph and stormed out. They weren't going to help me. I was on my own. Asterisk, I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to shake the fear crawling under my skin. I should have gone home, but the idea of being alone in my apartment, trapped between those walls with no idea who was watching me, made my stomach churn. Instead, I found myself pulling into Jason's driveway. I didn't even remember making the decision to come here, but I needed to talk to someone, even if it was my cheating, lying ex. I banged on his door, harder than necessary. When he opened it, his face twisted into an irritated scowl. "Lena, seriously?" Twice in one day, I shoved the photograph at him. "Look at this." His smirk vanished. His brows pulled together as he stared at the image. When he finally looked up at me, something flickered in his expressions, something I couldn't quite read. "Where did you get this?" I swallowed hard. "It was on my car, and I think the same guy who left that note on my door put it there." Jason exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Shit. That single word sent a bolt of cold down my spine. Jason wasn't playing dumb anymore. He knew something. "What?" I pressed. "What do you know?" He hesitated, glancing past me as if making sure no one else was listening. Then he grabbed my wrist and pulled me inside. Jason's apartment was a mess, half-drunk bottles of whiskey on the counter, clothes scattered on the couch. It smelled like stale beer and regret. But right now, I didn't care. I wanted answers. He turned to me, his jaw tight. "Lena, listen to me. You need to let this go." I stiffened. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," he said slowly, "whoever is doing this, they're not just messing with you. They're serious." A chill slithered down my spine. And how do you know that? Jason hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw it. The guilt, the regret. Jason wasn't just speculating. He knew something. My throat went dry. Jason, what did you do? I let out a slow breath, rubbing a hand down his face. It's not what I did, it's who I pissed off. The room tilted slightly. You mean, this isn't about me? Jason shook his head. No, it's about me. Asterisk, my stomach twisted. For days, I had believed this was my problem. That someone was out to get me because of what I did to Jason. But now, I wasn't the target. I was just collateral damage. Jason, I said carefully. Who is it? His jaw tightened. Lena, you need to leave town. Tonight. My pulse pounded in my ears. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's going on. Jason exhaled heavily. Remember that guy I used to hang with, Marcus? I nodded. Slowly, Marcus was trouble. The kind of trouble that never came without consequences. Jason continued, his voice low. I owed him money, a lot of money. When you pulled that little stunt on me the other night, I was supposed to be meeting him. He thinks I set him up. And now? He gestured to the photo in my hand. Now he thinks you're involved. My breath caught. This wasn't some sick game. This was real. I wasn't just dealing with an obsessive stalker. I was caught in the crossfire of something far bigger than I had ever imagined. Jason grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm. Lena, you need to get out of here. You need to disappear. Marcus doesn't. Let things go. I shook my head. I didn't do anything. Jason's face darkened. It doesn't matter. I stepped back, my heart hammering. This was insane. Yesterday, I had been celebrating my victory. Today, I was being told to run for my life. The room felt smaller, the air too thick to breathe. Jason's voice dropped to a whisper. Lena, if you stay, you're dead. Asterisk, I stood. They're frozen. Jason's words sinking into my skin like ice. If you stay, you're dead. I wanted to laugh, to call him dramatic, but the look in his eyes, the raw, unfiltered fear, kept me silent. Jason wasn't a good person. He was a liar, a cheater, a manipulator. But he wasn't a coward. And if he was scared, that meant I should be terrified. I forced myself to swallow the lump in my throat. So what, Jason? You're telling me to? Just pack a bag and disappear. His jaw tightened. Yes. I let out a shaky breath, shaking my head. I can't just, Jason. I have a life here. My job, my apartment. I can't just leave everything behind because your bad choices are. Catching up to you, his expression darkened. Lena, you don't get it. This isn't about my choices anymore. The second Marcus thought you were involved. You became part of the problem. He won't care if you had nothing to do with it. A sick feeling coiled in my stomach. I thought back to the man in the hoodie. The note. The photograph on my car. I had been so sure it was some sick mind game Jason was playing, a pathetic attempt to rattle me. But now, it was something much worse. Jason's eyes flickered to the window, his whole body tense. Do you have anywhere safe you can go? I hesitated. My family lived states away. I had friends in the city, but I wasn't about to drag them into this mess. I don't know. I admitted. Jason exhaled sharply. Then go to a hotel, somewhere under a fake name. Keep your phone off. My hands curled into fists. This is insane. I shouldn't have to run because some thug has the wrong idea. Jason's face twisted. Then don't run. See what happens? Silence stretched between us. I had never felt more powerless in my life. Jason must have sensed it because his tone softened. Lena, you're smart, you're strong. But Marcus, he doesn't play fair. You're not dealing with some petty ex out for revenge. You're dealing with a guy who doesn't leave loose ends. My stomach clenched. Loose ends. That's what I was now. A loose end. Asterisk, I didn't go to a hotel. I should have. I should have listened. But something about running made me feel weak. And if there was one thing I refused to be, it was weak. Instead, I went home. I locked every door. I pulled every curtain shut. I sat on my couch, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. I told myself I was safe. I told myself I was fine. And then a soft knock at the door. I jumped, my breath catching in my throat. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. I didn't move. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in around me. I crept toward the peephole, my pulse hammering. And when I looked, he was there, the man in the black hoodie, standing perfectly still, waiting. The air in my lungs turned to stone. I stepped back, my mind racing. My fingers hovered over my phone. Call 911. Call 911. But then a voice, low, amused. I know you're in there, Lena. My blood turned to ice. I staggered back, shaking my head. No, 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 no. This couldn't be happening. He leaned in, pressing a hand against the door. His voice was smooth, almost teasing. You've been a very naughty girl. Tears burned at the back of my eyes. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to think. Do I scream? Do I run? Do I run? Do I? A metallic sound clicked from the other side of the door. He was picking the lock. My body moved before my brain could catch up. I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a lampstand, gripped it tight. My breath coming in short. Panicked gasps. The lock rattled. The knob turned, and then silence. I stood there, his heart hammering. Two. Then, his voice, soft as a whisper. See you soon, sweetheart. Footsteps. Fading. I stood frozen for what felt like hours before I finally dared to move. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then, I cracked it open just a fraction. The hallway was empty. He was gone. I don't remember packing. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I just remember running. By the time I made it to my car, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I peeled out of the parking lot, my heart slamming against my ribs. Jason was right. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a prank. And now I had nowhere left to hide. I didn't stop driving. Streetlights blurred past me in streaks of yellow and white. My hands gripping the wheel so tightly, my knuckles ached. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening, but no matter how many times I replayed it, Jason's warning, the man at my door, the lock-turning eye, couldn't come up with a way out. I had no plan, no safe place, no one to turn to. All had was the knowledge that he was out there, watching, waiting, and I didn't know when he'd make his next move. I pulled into a gas station off the highway, my hands trembling as I reached for my phone. There was only one person I could call. I hated the idea. Hated that it had come to this. But I had no other options. I pressed Jason's number. It rang once, twice, then Lena. His voice was groggy, thick with sleep. I glanced at the clock. 3:17 a.m. Jason, I whispered, my voice barely holding. Steady. He came to my apartment. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. Shit. My throat tightened. He tried to get in. He picked the lock. Jason cursed under his breath. I heard movement on the other end, rustling sheets. The creak of a bed. Where are you? A gas station off Route 19. I swallowed hard. I don't know what to do. Jason was quiet for a moment. Then his voice was steady. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. I didn't argue. For the first time in days, I let someone else take control. Jason pulled up 20 minutes later, his car screeching to a stop beside mine. I climbed into the passenger seat, and he barely waited for me to shut the door before peeling back onto the road. His face was tense. His jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. I expected him to start lecturing me. To say, I told you so. You should have left when I said, but he didn't. Instead, he said, I have a plan. I turned to him, startled. A plan? Jason nodded, eyes locked on the road. Marcus doesn't let things go. He does respect power. The only way to end this is to show him that you're not just some scared girl running from him. Bitter laugh escaped me. Oh, really? And how do I do that? Jason's grip tightened on the wheel. We set a trap. I stared at him. A trap, he nodded. We make him the one who's afraid. Jason drove us to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place where bad things happened, the kind of place where no one would hear you scream. The plan was simple. Jason would call Marcus. He would tell him I was ready to make things right, that I wanted to meet, alone, but I wouldn't be alone. Jason had a friend, a guy named Rick, who owed him a favor. Rick wasn't exactly a good guy, but he was the kind of guy Marcus would listen to. And tonight, Rick would be waiting inside that warehouse with a gun in his hand. If Marcus thought he had the upper hand, we'd make sure he realized he didn't. An hour later, the plan was set. I stood inside the warehouse, my pulse pounding in my ears. Jason and Rick were hidden in the shadows, waiting, and then dashed footsteps. Heavy. Measured, I swallowed hard. The doors creaked open, and Marcus stepped inside. He was exactly how I imagined him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with cold, calculating eyes. The kind of man who had never once been afraid in his life, until tonight. He took his time walking toward me, his hands tucked into his pockets. "Lena," he said, voice smooth. "You've been causing me a lot of trouble." I lifted my chin, ignoring the way my stomach twisted. "I didn't do anything to you." Marcus smiled. "See? That's where you're wrong." He took another step forward. "You humiliated Jason, which meant he wasn't there when he was supposed to be, and that made me look weak." His smile faded, and I don't tolerate weakness. Cold sweat broke out on my skin. This was it. The moment that decided everything. I took a slow, deep breath and said, "You're right. I made a mistake." Marcus arched a brow. "Oh," I nodded. "I should have taken you down first." And that was Rick's cue. A gun cocked behind Marcus. The man stiffened. His eyes flicked toward the shadows. Then Jason stepped forward. "Guess. You're the one looking weak now, huh?" Marcus's jaw clenched. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared at me, and for the first time, I saw it. A flicker of uncertainty, maybe even fear. I took a step closer. "You said revenge is a game two people can play." My voice was steady now. "Well, I just won." A long beat of silence, then Marcus exhaled sharply and lifted his hands. "All right, Aka." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Looks like I underestimated you." Jason stepped beside me, his voice sharp. "You walk away, Marcus. You forget about her. Or, next time, it won't be a gun pointed at you." Marcus chuckled. "Fair enough." And just like that, was over. He turned and walked out, disappearing into the night. The tension finally cracked, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Jason turned to me. "You okay?" I met his eyes. I had spent so long being afraid, but not anymore. I straightened my shoulders. "Yeah." I swallowed hard, my voice steady. "I'm okay." Jason smirked. "Damn, remind me never to piss you off again." I laughed, shaking my head. "Oh, trust me. You could never handle round two." And with that, I walked away. Stronger than ever, because I had finally won. And I wasn't afraid anymore. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought? Or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments side. Love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.